should be up. And we have ZBrush 2021 up and running, just like the rest of you do. And let's talk a little bit about that. One of the biggest things that I've seen, actually, let me go back here. There we go. So, getting started with ZBrush 2021, you're probably going to end up in here, and you've got your light box open. If you go all the way to the right, there's going to be a bunch of little fun things you can do in here that'll kind of take you through the process of simulation. Before we do that, though, what I'm going to do is, kind of reading through the comments on Facebook and stuff like that, and on YouTube comments and stuff, there's a couple, there's one really fundamental thing that I want to make sure everybody gets and help spread the word about this. It's essentially, I have a sphere in my scene. Go into edit mode, make it a polymesh 3D. So we have a polymesh sphere. On top of that sphere, let's go ahead and say we're going to append a plane 3D. We've got this plane 3D, and we're going to rotate it. So if we turn on our floor, you can orient ourselves in space. It's Y forward, X across the X-axis here. Move this plane up, and you know what? Let's take the sphere, and we're going to scale it down. So you can probably already tell what I'm about to do is we're going to make collision for the sphere. So we have this polyplane here, and I'm going to run dynamic simulation on this. So in order to do that, let's open up our dynamics thing, little menu right here. We'll just drag it on over, and you're going to see we have gravity on by default and floor collision on by default. So when I run this, let's go ahead and switch this out to Skin Shader 4 so you can see it a little bit better. It's going to simulate, and it's just going to fall through, but it is going to catch on the floor because we have floor collision. Great. So in order for it to simulate around this collision volume, we're going to need to tell it, hey, everything I don't have selected but is visible in my scene is a collision volume. Now I can run that simulation. Now, you're going to see it went fast. And in fact, it kind of stretched quite a bit. So when we're talking about cloth simulation or dynamic simulation and what the algorithm underneath it is trying to do, it's trying to maintain relationships between these points. And in the fact that in the instance of cloth, it's that relationship it's trying to maintain is between the edges and also like the surface area of the entire volume, or in this case, the surface area of this square. So it needs to run calculations while it does that. If I go here, I can go BTC, and that's our transpose cloth brush. I can move this, and I can kind of move it and drape it down. See how much nicer that is? I'll tell you why. It's because I moved slow. So essentially what it's doing up here in dynamics, the simulation iterations, that's saying how many times per movement do you want me to go through and calculate all of these dynamic relationships. Every single one of those points is looking at the other points and going, hey, we're supposed to kind of be together to maintain this surface volume, the surface area. So let's do that as much as we can. However, if you don't give it enough time to properly calculate through those iterations, if I go like this, see that result I get? It's like kind of splashy, kind of stretchy. Same thing if I go in here to cloth hook. I can go through here and it's like, okay, if I pull slowly, yeah, they're all maintaining those relationships between those edges. It's maintaining that surface area. It's behaving like cloth would. When you take a towel on your table and you move it quick, that's real life. It's going to maintain its surface area. You're not going to move a towel so fast. Well, I mean, maybe if you're Superman, you're not going to move a towel so fast that it's going to stretch, But in here, because it's having to calculate these positions in 3D and a graphic, a computer program, you can physically go so fast that it actually stretches and increases that surface area. See, I can just do this. Whoosh, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, why did it do that? Because it didn't have time to calculate. Now, to get back to the biggest thing you can take away as far as how dynamic simulations work with geometry, with calculations, is essentially giving it time and allowing it to calculate. So there's two things you can do here. If this is the result you're getting and you're like, oh, ZBrush cloth, not doing what I want, this is how you fix it. You go through here, gravity strength. You can turn this gravity strength down so it runs slower. Now, you don't have to make it run that slow, but there you go. Now it's running a little bit slower, and now it's giving it time to run these simulation iterations on that mesh. Here's another thing you can do. You can crank up that simulation iterations so that it's going to run more iterations as it falls. See how much nicer it maintains these relationships? So in fact, if we crank this back up to 10 and have our simulation iterations up to 100, much better. You know, so it's going to take a little bit longer. It's a little more calculation intensive. But between these two is how you can kind of dial in exactly how your cloth, how it's going to maintain and how well it's going to maintain those relationships. Now, this also comes into play with strength and firmness. So if I go through here and I change firmness down to 1 and I run the simulation, it's still going to maintain these relationships. See, it's not really that stretchy, but boy, is it kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Silky. You know, it's more of a silky cloth. If I go up here and I crank this up, this firmness up to 5, it'll maintain those relationships just fine, but now it's like a piece of leather. You know what I mean? Usually around 2 or 3 is pretty good. You know, it's like a nice cloth simulation. So that's the basics of that, and then we can go over here and we can say, okay, we can turn the gravity strength down and keep our simulations at 100 and get the same result. Or as we're moving this, just move it slower and allow those relationships to take hold and simulate, and that'll be the result we get. Now, if we do want to have, you know, very silky mesh and we're doing the simulation and that went too fast, so how do we fix that? Well, we're going to take our gravity strength and we're going to make it run a little bit slower so our computer has enough time to calculate those positions, and we can increase the simulation iterations, see if we can't find a happy medium. Now you're going to see it's colliding with the collision volume, it's colliding with the floor, it's not colliding with itself. If you really want nice wrinkles that don't look like, you know, when you fold a towel or you crumple up a towel, the towel doesn't morph through the mesh. So you're going to need to tell it, hey, be aware of yourself. It's going to increase the calculations. You know, it's going to increase the amount of thinking the simulation has to do while it's moving. And also, if we go over here to geometry, what am I looking for here? Dynamic subdiv. Turn on dynamic. This will give you a little subdiv dynamic preview, and also it can have it even a little dynamic thickness in here. And so now, I guess we can turn it back to our startup material. Now we have a very silky material, but we've still maintained those relationships because we had the proper number of simulation iterations and gave it time. So we slowed that gravity down, and there we go. So and it's also it's self-aware. It's able to look at, it's able to calculate not only its position in space, not only the collision volumes, not only colliding with the floor, but also colliding with itself. So a lot of calculation is happening, but that's how you can kind of control what's going on. So again, I wanted to do this at the very beginning, just to get that point across, because I think that's what most people are having trouble with, is they'll just run the default settings and drop it from like 40 feet, and then it goes haywire, it stretches too much, and then, you know, they kind of go, oh, what's up with the simulation? Cool, everybody. So Steve says there's no rewind button. Are we just hitting undo to get back to the last state before running the simulation? There kind of is a rewind button. I'm glad you brought that up. So we can go through here, and we can go through and we can run the simulation. Yay, we like it. And we're going to go here and turn on dynamic so we get a little bit more eye candy and you guys go, ooh, look how cool it is. And also maybe a little bit of thickness. So now as far as that rewind button goes, let's, well, obviously there's undo, but what I'm really looking for here is our ability to go into a layer here. This is something we didn't really demonstrate, and honestly, maybe I shouldn't be demoing this because I don't know that I actually did it. I saw it done, and I read about it in the documentation, but I never actually done this. You know what? We're doing it live. So we have this object here, and we want to simulate it, and we want to kind of have a rewind button, or at least to be able to step through and kind of see like, ooh, you know, it started colliding, and then it went too far, and I wish I could just back it off just a little bit. That's where this record deformation animation is going to come into play. So if I tap that, and then I run the simulation, and then I untap it, and then it's going to pop up a window, and I go, okay, throw this, I'm just going to put this on my desktop here, and we're going to say animation MDD, so we can save that. And so now what I can do is I can go in here to movie, and I may have to pull open my notes for this, I apologize. Movie show, and we can import an MDD, so we just import the animation MDD we just exported, so I'm going to import it. There we go. And now I'm just going to, so now it's in a layer. So I think if I tap on the timeline and start scrubbing this timeline, that's the point it's going to start. And then now you can go through here and you can be like, oh, just a little bit back. It would be perfect. So then you can use that. It's just calculating the vertex positions of that object. So you can kind of go through here and just pinpoint exactly where you want to grab that simulation. Or you can do like remix music videos. Would simulation work better with a triangulated model? You can try. Let me see. I'm just going to say delete that layer here. And you know what? Let's go ahead and turn this off. So, oops. Show off. So I just had to close a window here. Cancel. There we go. You can try it. So we can go through here. I haven't noticed. I haven't, honestly, I've done both. I think what happens with so same thing, just kind of like with geometry. I don't know about performance. I get where you're coming from, but I think in here where it's like, oh, I'm bending this geometry and I'm getting, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm getting reliable, I'm having a hard time with words. I'm getting predictable results because quads give you predictable results, especially if you want to work with things like subdivisions, which is really, really powerful with this. So what I can do is, you know what, let's do this real quick. Let's do our old, delete that one. I'm going to rotate this one around. Oops. Let's do a BTR for a regular old transpose. Go in here and turn on my floor. So real quick, we're going to say dynamic, turn smooth down to 0. We're going to apply that thickness. We're going to turn on skin shader 4 so you can see what we're doing. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say gravity off, floor off, collision volume off, inflate on, and we're just going to inflate ourselves out of pillow. So with this pillow inflated, and we'll go back to brush transpose here. What's really powerful about this, I mean, you can triangulate the mesh if you want to. In fact, you can even just dynamesh this. You're like, oh yeah, give me a dynamesh, and then let's go ahead and turn gravity back on and run a simulation. Oops, and floor collision. It'll run. It'll do fine, but you'll see as that stuff starts deforming, you're getting slightly crunchy, slightly unpredictable results, maybe because they're triangles. And another thing you can't take advantage of if you're using triangles, I mean, I guess you can subdivide through triangles, but as soon as you subdivide a triangle, it goes to a quad. I mean, it gives you reconstructible geometry. But what you're kind of missing out on is the ability to go through here and hit Control D or divide, and now we have multiple levels of subdivision. So as I bring this down and I'm at a higher, come on, floor collision on. Oh, brush transpose cloth. So as I collide with this ground, or as I go through and brush cloth hook, you're going to see, oh, I'm getting very smooth wrinkles. So go ahead and turn on dynamic, thickness down, smooth this up to 1. So I'm getting very fine wrinkles. Well, I don't want fine wrinkles right now. I'm working on primary and secondary forms. So what I want to do instead is drop this down to subdivision level 1, and then get nice big wrinkles, get nice big primary read wrinkles, and then I can just go up in subdivisions, and I can start getting a little bit finer wrinkles, keep going up in subdivision. And now this is where you can start going into like brush, cloth, pinch trails, or dimple, anything that requires a little bit more geometry than you think. And this is another thing too, if you go in here to on brushed and fade that border and kind of go through here, and these require a little bit more geometry. We're in 34,000 points here. So something to consider is like, yeah, it'll run fine. This thing runs like crazy. Like everybody was concerned, like, oh, does it run on the GPU? Oh, what kind of CPU do I need? I mean, I'm running on a Threadripper 3970X. I don't know how, I haven't actually looked at this and see how well it distributes in this particular instance, but ZBrush runs like butter on here, and the simulations are kind of like, they're ridiculous. They're not like, oh, he hit simulate and go have breakfast, use the bathroom, and come back. If we go in here and it works on anything. I can go in here to the dog. It's kind of astounding how this thing works. I'm going to go through here real quick and just do a close hole so it's at all one closed mesh, and then just run the simulation. And again, if I crank this up, there we go, boom, that runs quick. Now, oh, actually, that scales astoundingly well too. So let's turn this down. Let's just do a little test here. Look at that. So grab them cores, man. You want to simulate and have it distribute that workload very, very well. That's it's not a bad thing. So down here in the simulation iterations, we got that up at 1,000. We've got gravity here. We're going to slow that gravity down. We're going to give it plenty of time to think about those calculations, and then I'm going to run the simulation. Sorry, I'm just like actually fascinated by this. But again, we can go through here, and I can turn that gravity strength up. It'll go quick. You know, it may not have time to calculate or do a tremendous amount. You can see it's starting to stutter there because I put self-collision up to 4. I can put firmness up. Simulations iterations is way up. Gravity strength is pretty high. So with all that on there now, but I mean, it still runs fast. And again, it's running on a dog. Who goes in there and simulates a dog? Nobody. But totally doable. It's fast. It works on anything. Anything you can throw at it that's geometry and ZBrush and calculatable, it's perfectly fine. So there's that, and we can go ahead here and inflate it. And again, while we're inflating this here, let's say firmness down to 2. Let's crank this down to 100 again. And floor collision off. There we go. So we can kind of inflate this dog out. And masking is also a thing too we need to keep in mind. You can go through here and you can run the simulation, and you can mask areas you don't want to. Invert that. And if we want to allow expansion, just turn on expand, and that'll allow you to increase that surface area. So now we're going there, and then inflating that. Let's go ahead and dynamic that out. So, would simulation work better with triangulated model? Yeah, that would. I don't think so. I know you kind of lose out on the functionality of being able to step through subdivisions, maybe. Can you wrap the cloth around a character like in Marvelous Designer? Yeah, if you guys missed... We actually did a bunch of that on the live demo. Okay, I got a helper who's going to link you to that real quick. But essentially, if you know, there's one thing I haven't tried yet. But here's the thing: if you want to simulate cloth, this is one of those things too, where it's like that I like about this is you don't have to be a seamstress. So you can go through here, and it's like, okay, give me this humanoid male here, and I'm on ZBrush. And I'm going to go here to subtool. Let's go ahead and divide him up so we get a nice collision mesh. Let's duplicate this off. And let's say I want to make a shirt. So instead of going through there with a pattern, I can just go through here and say, give me a shirt. Control, mask, pin. Actually, that's perfectly fine. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to say geometry, delete lower. And we're going to say geometry, edge loop mask border. Grab this shirt here. Oh, I forgot this thing is all divided up like crazy. Okay, let's undo all that. Let's hit Control W so it's all one poly group. And now we can go through here. It's nice that it's divided up, but I need to turn that off for demonstration purposes because I never use those groups. So here's my shirt, and if I want to, I can clean this up a little bit by going in here. It's like, you know, I want a little more of a scoop neck back here, and a little more of a up neck back here. Great, I just made a shirt. Well, let's drop these down. It's more of a, let's also turn off the floor here. So we got this shirt here, and if I go through, and again we do that geometry, edge of the mask border, isolate this one, delete hidden, maybe smooth out some of these surface deformations. We go in here, zero mesh half, depth size down to 0, and we've just basically modeled a shirt. So if you want to simulate this cloth, you just go in here, we turn this guy on, we go over here and we say, give me a collision volume, crank it up, just if you want to, you know, make sure you're getting the best collision volume off of him, and then we can go through here and we can just run that simulation, and now this object is going to simulate around this collision volume. We can also add, let's see here, let's kind of scoot this out a little bit here. There we go. So now we also have an inflate value around this collision volume, so that's kind of where it stops. I'm going to go ahead and say, you know, let's drop this down quite a bit, and then we're going to run that simulation. And let's go ahead and contract this in the Z direction. So X left to right, Z back to front, Y up and down. Run the simulation now. It'll go ahead and contract to him. And there we go. We have a collision volume of a body. Again, remember, you can go down here. You can add thickness to your mesh, dynamic thickness and dynamic smoothness. So here's dynamic thickness. You can turn it off, Shift D, D, turn it back on. And now you can go through here and you can modify this. So again, you don't have to be super fancy. You don't have to be like, well, how do I do a pattern? You can use a pattern. I haven't actually done this method, but we'll do that next maybe. And go through here and you can start simulating on this cloth. You also have this offset. So if I go down here to -100, if I go in here to solo, it's basically the simulated cloth is the outermost point and you're putting this thickness on the inside. 0 is going to split the difference right down the middle, and then 100 is going to be the inmost point is dynamic, and then everything out here is simulated. So I'm going to go here to -100 here, and maybe like we'll inflate this just a bit. Something like this, and let's drop that thickness down. All right, so we've simulated a very easy ZBrush shirt. We have nice subdivision, so if we want to, let's turn the smooth subdiv down to 1, and we can go in here to brush, brush cloth hook, and then now as we go through here, and again, we probably want to allow a little bit of self-collision in here, and go through and kind of pull this up and start getting wrinkles around this collision volume. You know, it's not going to stick, it's going to not want to stick to them basically. Of course, we can do a little bit better than that. Keep in mind, you can also go through here and you can use masking to your advantage here. So if you want to like mask this bottom out, let's smooth subdiv up to 2, and I want to run like an expand in the X and Z here. We can go through here and we can kind of allow that to expand out and give them a real cute look. As well as we can go through here and we can say, let's mask. If you want to control exactly where those wrinkles go, you can go like, hey, I want wrinkles along the back here. So Control Tap to blur that out, invert that. And because we don't have unmasked on, it's only going to happen where we have it unmasked. So this is where we can go in here and to inflate in the Y direction. And that'll kind of give us, it'll kind of push against those surface normals and allow us to get a little bit of back wrinkling. We can even throw a little maybe expand on there and allow it to kind of expand out. You know, let's expand in the Y direction. Give it a little bit more wrinkles maybe. Here's the thing too. I did almost 0 clothing or cloth expiration. Like I said in the live demo, the first 6 or 7 things, and if you guys haven't been to my YouTube channel, I'll go ahead and link you to this here. It's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These first 7 videos you're going to see on here under videos is all the exploration I did. Very little of it has to do with cloth. I was wrecking vehicles. I was draping tubes. I was doing like little blow up animals. Topology, taking topology and like wiggling into place around other meshes and stuff like that. So I haven't really done a whole lot of cloth. I think cloth was like kind of like a given to me, and my brain was like, yeah, cloth of course, but let's go through here. And in fact, if we do BTC, we can go through here and we can kind of use our cloth and have our collision volume on. So we can go through here and we can kind of wrinkle this shirt, you know, right on this character here. Of course, let's go ahead and, do we need inflate on? I don't know. I'll have to play with some of these settings. So I think what I'm most excited about is getting you guys in here with just the bare minimum. Like now that you know what simulation iterations do, now that you know to slow it down on gravity if you need to, I think you guys are going to have a ton of fun, and you guys are going to come up with the best settings and the best workflows. And this is also ZBrush's first foray into a dynamics menu. Of course, things are going to get more refined. Of course, things are going to get better. Of course, things are going to get faster. But even given this, I think you guys are going to get some really, really cool results. I think. But here's another thing too you can do. I've never actually done this. So me and Dress were going to do the live demo, and like 20 minutes before we go on, he was like, "Oh yeah, I gotta demo this one thing," and then he pulled this out, which I had never seen before in my life, but makes sense. Like it's one of those things where I'm like, "Oh yeah, why didn't I think of using Spotlight for clothing?" Because essentially what it is if you want to take a pattern like an MD, you have a pattern on the front and a pattern on the back. You can take a plane in ZBrush and stamp a pattern on it, cut it out by poly group or poly paint paint the pattern on there and then slice it out and do an extraction to get the exact same result. But it's kind of genius to come in here and say, hey, you know what, give me clothing spotlight. I'm going to go into Z here and I'm just going to tap out. I'm working on a small resolution here, so if you can't see it, just tap to unselect all these and then you can just move this thing around. So now at least you can see it. And so now you can go through here and you can say, okay, let's grab a shirt. So I'm going to grab a shirt here and we're going to scale it up. And so this is like a little pattern. So if you're used to patterns and you want to kind of work within these confines, this is what you can do. Now, as I'm moving this guy around, I'm like, this thing doesn't really work that well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Z. I'm going to touch this little quick select. I'm going to go back in here and say, you know what? That tank top works a little bit better for his body type. So you can go through here and you can swap. So anything I touch over here is just going to swap out on there. So I'm going to say, you know what? This tank top is a little bit better. So I can go through here, position this tank top, hit Z to go out of there. I can position his body behind there. And then when I hit Z, I can go through here, take a snapshot of this mesh. And if you haven't seen this, I don't remember exactly where this is. You can go to my ArtStation page, and I want to say that's a ZBrush 2020. What's new? If you go up here and click in the top right-hand corner, when was Spotlight? Anybody know? Regardless, it's in here somewhere. It's either 2020 or 2019 or 2018 or 4R8. It's all in here. Same thing on my YouTube channel. I've got playlists for that. But feel free to go in there. But anyway, if you like using those patterns to kind of create clothing, what you can do is you can come in here, you can turn on this little brush icon, and now we can see our poly paint. You have poly groups on here, so I can take this red poly group, Control-Shift-Drag, say delete hidden, and then again we want to have this collide with our body, so we need collision volume. We'll go ahead and recalculate just in case. We're not going to inflate, we're going to contract in the Z direction, and then we're just going to run the simulation and let that simulate on the body. There we go. Now, even though we didn't even have any real spans along the side, didn't matter. Think of that as like your stitching. And it also doesn't even matter that like, oh, this geometry's crap. We can go through here and we can do a polish by features. In fact, I'm going to just hit Control W. A feature is technically a polygroup border or a crease, and I think we have both. So just hit Control W, make it all one polygroup. You can turn off that poly paint. And then now we can go through here, do a polish by features, and then I'll go ahead and clean up these edges. You can also, if you want to just stick to the edges, you can go in here to, where do you go? You go in here to masking, you can mask that open border, Control tap to invert that, or you can like grow that mask a little bit, invert it, go up here to like polish by features, just polish those border edges. There might even be a macro for it. There's some cool macros now in ZBrush 2021. But did you send them the link to the, no, the big live stream you interested? Good. Yeah. So check that live stream out. We went over a lot of functionality in there. There's some stuff we can cover. I'll do a quick mirror and weld just to make it the same on both sides. Obviously, you don't want your cloth to simulate both sides because things aren't really that symmetrical. But go through here, move this cloth around. We have that inflate value, but that's okay because we're going to go in here and add thickness anyways underneath our dynamic menu. So we got dynamic on. We've got some thickness turned up like this. Now, before we do all this, I want new geometry. So we smoothed it out, but we still have pretty bad geo. Real easy to fix. Zero measure half, dash size down to 0. Boom, we have new shirt. If you want to go lower, just keep doing half. Or if you want to dial in a specific number or whatever you want, there's your new shirt geo, and then you can subdivide up and get big wrinkles or smaller wrinkles depending on whatever. If you want a new algorithm as well, if you go down here to geometry, zero measure, hold down Alt. That'll run a different algorithm, might get you a little bit better result. I like that pretty well. So now we have, go through here and we can hit Control D, and that'll subdivide it up. Ooh, I guess that's not great, huh? Let's see if we can't fix this real quick. So we got Z modeler here, BZM. I'm going to go through here and say split edge. And this is one of those things where it's like, yeah, triangles, not so predictable, or I guess it's predictably crappy. So we're going to go ahead and bridge 2 points here. And then if I want to run that all the way maybe back to here or something, I don't know if this is going to be worth fixing. Let's just do this. Let's just say collapse edge here. And then I'm just going to hit Control D. Let's say this is what I want to do. Collapse this edge, move this one up, and there we go. That'll work. So delete that edge, and then just hide that triangle somewhere in here. Again, not great, but you know what? It beats the hell out of me resurfacing this whole thing by hand. And also, maybe try turning down when we went here and we did our Z-Remesh. Maybe keep our adaptive size up a little bit. So let's say Z-Remesh double and see if that gives us something a little bit more stable. That's not too bad. I like that. So we'll keep that. So now we have a shirt. We made a shirt. We used a pattern method for the shirt, and we have remeshed it to get new geometry. We can go through here and we can do our dynamic smooth subdiv of, let's just do 1 for now, and then maybe give a little bit of thickness here. And we can run our collision, or we can just have our collision volume on, and then we can hit W and we just like contract this mesh down, get some wrinkles going along the body here, and use our cloth brushes, brush cloth, I don't know, pull, or you guys figure this out, man. I'm not the cloth expert here. Another thing too that keeps this kind of lame, and also make sure you have self collision on, is that he's not posed. So while you're just standing here, you're just going to have pretty boring wrinkles. So what I might consider doing, and let's see if we can just do this real quick. I'm going to go down here to Subdiv level 1, and let's give this guy, you know, maybe kind of rotate this thing around, and whoa, brush transform regular, BTR, and see if we can't, you know, control click to blur it out a little bit, and then go through here and maybe give him a little, goodness gracious, turn off X symmetry, give him a little twist to the hips. Boy, I need to reposition that, don't I? Here, there we go. That should work a little bit better. So we're going to twist on the hips and can maybe kind of bend a little bit here, and maybe bend forward quite a bit. And then I don't know, you could raise his arm up or something like that. But even this will give you something more interesting to simulate around than just having him stand there. So you could, let's see if we can just do this. Turn off dynamic. Let's calculate a new collision volume. I'm just going to get this vaguely in place. Maybe go through here and help it out a little bit more. Good enough. So now again, let's recalculate that collision volume. Let's go ahead and contract it in the Z, and there you go. Let's run that a little bit slower and just get that to simulate right on his body. So already we have more interesting wrinkles happening because there's actually motion going on. So something interesting, maybe you do, like, okay, everybody likes to sculpt in a, me especially, sculpt in an A pose and go through and do all your clothing and stuff. And then maybe when you pose it out, you know, use Transpose Master and get that stuff into place. But then once you have an actual pose, that's when interesting wrinkles start happening. It really, you know, kind of, it shows you how dynamic, you know, the pose is, and kind of reinforces that in the stress points, you know, kind of pulling and the lateral movement you're going to get. It just makes for a better story, and of course, you're probably going to have a better result other than just having to stand there and trying to get wrinkles to look interesting. So, boy, I'm a little bit behind here. Let's see. Do you see it's replacing any functionality in Marvelous Designer, or is it more of its own thing? I know it's early, but how do you see the cloth stuff fitting in your workflow? I would probably be like, can I do cloth in here? If yes, then why would I bother going anywhere else? And again, this is ZBrush's first iteration into this, so there may be instances where it's like, you know what, it's actually easier for me to go into Marvelous Designer and get the result that I want. But rarely is it easier for me to go in, do some spline math, sew it, run simulation, fight it, and try and pull it around and push it around. I know ZBrush very well, so it's a lot easier for me to go, hey, I can make a shirt in 10 seconds. I can make anything in 10 seconds, simulate it, get what I need, use all these cloth brushes available to me, get the result I need, and then I usually take Marvelous Designer into ZBrush anyways, and Z-remesh it and project the primary and secondary forms, and I detail it up with like pucker brushes and alphas and rolling alphas and stuff. So probably for me personally, and again, I'm a ZBrush person, I use ZBrush a lot, it's probably going to be more of a, do I go into Marvelous Designer every once in a while for something very specific, or do I stay in here until I need to? And probably I'm going to stay in here until I need to go out of here. And again, like you said, this is early, so if you're looking for anything that doesn't work, be vocal about it and be like, hey, you know, this is great, but it would be even better if it could do this. You know, believe me, these guys are way smarter than I am. They're probably already 5 steps ahead on all this stuff. You know, you got to release something at some point. But that's not to say this isn't robust as heck. Like, even the little time I spent with it, I feel like I'm only scratching the surface. You guys are going to play with this for days and hours and weeks. And there's going to be functionality and settings and like little things you can do in here that ZBrush can do that's going to make this nuts. So I guarantee it. Does a sim work with store morph target? Yes, in fact, morph target storing is a function of this. So if we go down here and we go to morph target, if you guys don't know what a morph target is, essentially we can store the vertex positions of this object. So we can store a morph target, and then as we go through here and we say brush, cloth, hook, and just kind of pull this stuff around and kind of go through here and just kind of grab some wrinkles, kind of, again, push this cloth around. We have those original vert positions. So what we can do is we can hit switch, and that's going to switch that, and we can go to BMO, and we can morph back those wrinkles, or we can switch back out of here and you can morph these wrinkles out. So you can kind of use this to kind of morph back, and you can do it selectively too. So you can turn that Z intensity down, get a big brush, just be like, you know what, I just wanted that one wrinkle mostly, and you can kind of just fine tune it like that. You can also store a layer. We talked about recording layers, but you can also, any vert positions can be recorded into a layer. So for example, let's just do it. So we got this shirt here. I'm going to say, let's go ahead and delete a morph target. So you can do both. You can do a morph target and a layer. We make a new layer. We go through here and we say, oh yeah, not a morph brush, cloth, hook. Go through here and kind of do whatever zany stuff we need to with cloth. And then we go in here and say, okay, stop recording. So now I can dial that in and out, or we can under crank it. So we can kind of go the opposite direction, or you can go down here and you can over crank it. You can kind of go, wah. Or you know what? We can just turn it off, delete it, bake it, whatever you want to do. Now to go back to the morph target thing, basically what morph target also does, let's go out of here real quick. And we go in here to our, let's go to our trusty plane here, go into edit mode, make polymesh 3D. And again, we have floor simulation, we've got geometry, we've got dynamic. We're going to smooth subdiv of 1, put some thickness on here so we can see a little bit better. And this, I can't get, this is so cool too. If you guys haven't checked out MicroPoly, use MicroPoly. Let's turn the smooth subdivision down to 0. Like chainmail, like live on the fly. Oops, brush, cloth, hook. Oh, we have a collision volume still in there. Turn that off. Like boom. Like, oh my God, what? What is all this? You can just do that now? Yes, you can. It's pretty sweet. Go for it. So, and that's the other thing too, is you can like go through here and you can get all sorts of cool things, like little weaves and little patterns. And another thing I like to do is when I was doing the little, which one was it? I was going to go in my ArtStation page real quick. This little, this mech one, this whole lattice here and all the floors down here were done with MicroPoly. I just put a MicroPoly plane on there. And in fact, one of these things, let's undo here. Let's go back. One of these MicroPoly, sorry to go on a tangent here, but under geometry, dynamic, MicroPoly. Of course, you can do your own MicroPolys, but which one was it? That was a big plus sign. This one here, maybe? Yeah, so you can add thickness to this. And was it? No, it wasn't the plus sign. It was like it was a bunch of, grids. Yeah, this thing right here. How nuts is this? So when you go through here, and if you want to look at what this MicroPoly actually is, just select it, hold down Alt, tap grid, and then there's your grid sitting there. So you can go through here and you can change this MicroPoly to whatever you want. So if you wanted to be like, you know what, on this one I want to split a point, and then I want to say inset. We have Inquidus and insets now. So you can go through here and say, inset all this, and then say, what are we going to do? We're going to Q mesh polygroup all, hold down ship. I want to put a little hole on there. So now this is a custom MicroPoly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our plane here, and we have a custom one sitting out there now. So I'm going to hold down Control. I'm just going to grab this new grid, and now all of these have been replaced with one that has a little hole on it. So that's that cool little grid thing. Now, one thing I did do that I didn't realize I did, I hit Unify, and if I turn on this Z here and we go down to our draw menu and we say grid size of 1, what MicroPoly is looking for in his exact unit of 1. However, it's deep, so I didn't realize when I hit Unify. Usually what I'll do is I'll hit Unify to get it to fit within this bounding box. However, there is depth to this, and this depth requires also a 1 unit bounding box when I hit Unify. So what it did was it shrank it down. So now if I go back out here to my plane, you're going to see, oh, there's little gaps in here. I can fix that a little bit maybe with my scale and kind of force the scale up a little bit here. If I tap, sometimes when you tap, you get a little slider over here. It's not dynamically updating. But anyway, to fix that, just make sure it's fitting within that 1 unit scale. Hold down Control, we'll go ahead and update that. So now we'll get a nice weldable, see weld is on, pattern. So scale set to 1, all that good stuff. So now, and again, this is dependent on the resolution of your geometry, so you can reconstruct back down and get an even simpler mesh. You can change the thickness here, smooth Subdiv down, so you can actually just make this topology close all the holes. I think that's what I did for the little girders. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so we got this plane here, and we're going to go back up. We're going to turn MicroPoly off. We're going to delete lower, and we're going to turn on polyframe here. Skin Shader 4. So we were talking about morph targets. That's right. So brush, cloth, hook. Go through here. Oh boy, it's freaking out. Let me just do a quick. Go over here to document and just grab a range here. Turn off my cam view. There we go. So now let's see. Plane 3D edit. Thumbnail. Make polymesh 3D, and then we have our 1 division plane. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off here. Okay, so we have our plane, and we're pulling it around, and this is something interesting. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to hit Control D. I'm also going to go in here to geometry, turn on a little bit of thickness so we can see this a little bit better. And also because it's just so cool. So we're going to go through here, and we're going to start pulling this around. Now, with a morph target, so you see how I'm pulling it around, making these changes here. I'm setting up new relationships. Now, when you're doing a cloth movement, essentially what you're doing is you're setting up new relationships every time it stops. So we're moving this now, and now all these edges have new relationships with each other. The surface area has new relationships with each other. How you can go back to an original relationship, and in this case, like if you know this shape, we can go back down here to our morph target, and we can store a morph target. So right now, if I pull this edge, it's just going to let me pull and pull and pull, and it's fine. It's just going to let me do whatever I want. However, if I go down here and I store a morph target, and then I start going through here and I start pulling, and I just come up here and I just start, maybe I make a big change, and then I start just running that simulation, just wiggling it. See how it's starting to contract back to that original morph target position? That's what morph target's going to do, is just kind of as you're running a simulation, it's going to want to pull back to those original edge relationships that are stored in your morph target. So you can use that to your advantage. So yes, can you cache it and scroll through it on the timeline? Yeah. So we showed that earlier. Or basically, run any simulation you want, or make any changes that you want to this. So as you're going, like again, if you want to capture the perfect moment where we have a collision, so gravity on, run a simulation up, floor collision, gravity down just a bit. Boy, that was high. Run that simulation a little higher than that. It's like, okay, that's the simulation I want to run. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to say, underneath layers, record deformation animation. And you don't even have to just run a simulation either. You can hit W, use your transpose BTC, do your transpose cloth, whatever you want to do to make this whatever you want, and then say, okay, turn this off, store this as animation 01, and then wait for it. Go back in here to import MDD, bring in animation 01, and then now you can go through here and just set a point in time where you want it to start, and now you can go through here and just play through those vertex changes. So if you want to pinpoint exactly where in there, and this also it's stackable too, so all this geometry just sitting here. If you go over here to your dynamic, my dynamic's on. It's recording these vertex positions, but because they're verts, ZBrush can go in here and say, what do you want to do with them also? You want to smooth them out? You want to add some thickness? What do you want to do? And then you can just go right on top of that vert information and just add to it. So there's your rewind and fast forward. Is it possible for it to look like water? Now, this is interesting. Yes. Well, no. Yes. But I might not have a great answer for you, but one thing I do want to make sure, if you guys missed it on the live stream, is I'm going to turn off floor collision. This is really interesting. If I go through here and I turn on gravity and I have floor collision off, I run the simulation, it's just going to fall. It's just gravity. However, if I turn on liquefy and do run simulation with gravity, it's not going to do anything because it's looking at that surface and going, what do you want me to do with this? Because what liquefy needs is some change in direction of the cloth to know like what to do. So I'm going to go ahead and put little marks on these three corners. And now when I run a simulation with liquefy, it's going to simulate like it's swimming through water. So you get a much cooler, much more liquidy effect. Now, as for your answer or your question of, it's not what I'm really asking. I'm not asking, can I look like I'm swimming through water? I'm asking, can you make it look like it's splashing water? Probably. I wonder if you could do that because you have vert information. And I wonder if, I mean, you can also maybe even try if you want to get fancy and maybe if we do a, let's do this. Put on a little bit of self-collision. Let's go over here to geometry, modify topology, unweld all. And again, these are just points. So if we do unweld all and turn off dynamic. So essentially, we can turn on our floor simulation, floor collision here, and then run the simulation. Now that was with liquefy, we turn that off. That's gonna, now we also have self-collision turned up, so that's why it was kind of like, that was a cool simulation. That's why there was kind of exploding at the beginning, because they're all touching each other, and they're like, "Ooh, get away from me! I'm self-colliding." So that's why they kind of jumped at the beginning here. But there you go. So I'm wondering if you couldn't record something and then attach something else to it. I don't know. You guys figure that one out and let me know. Chris, that one's on you. You let me know if you can get that to work. It seemed there's something tickling in the back of my head where I'm like, I think there's something there where I'm like, because you can, here's another thing too you can do. I didn't actually do this. This was in the beta forums. Let me go back here. So maybe something interesting. You can shatter, you can unweld individual, like certain points that are visible here. So if we go through here and we say, you know what, I just want to shatter maybe this area. And I'm in uncharted territory here, so this may or may not work. But what I'm going to do is go through here. We're going to do an unweld all. Or is this even what I want to do? Basically, you can go through and you can provide like an unwelded point in here, and then you can pass an object through it, and as it collides, it kind of splits out the object, like you shoot a bullet through a surface. I wonder if you could use that as a way to kind of, it'll have a bullet, have a collision come through the surface, have the geometry react to it, and then turn on liquefy with dynamic simulations and have whatever's reacting to it kind of fall back and puddle. You may be able to get something. Maybe. I'll have to think about that. A triangulated mesh does better represent the folds. Yes, give that a shot. It's some other thing to do. Is it possible to use dynamics to toss a bunch of things like bolts, nails, etc. on the ground in other models, or build in class simulation that will always deform our shape? So this is something too. It's not rigid body dynamics, but what you can do is you can go in here to your MicroPoly. This is something I played with a little bit. We're going to turn on dynamic. We're going to turn off smooth. We're going to turn off thickness. Turn our MicroPoly on, and we're going to grab maybe these little springs here. So we got a bunch of little springs. You know what I'm doing? I'm reconstruct, and we're going to make this a little bit lower. And then we're going to say, you can rotate through here. You can align them to get different results. So I'm just going to say, what I'm looking for here. There we go. So we got a bunch of springs on here. So if I take these springs and I go through here and I have a floor collision on and I run the simulation, it's going to look like a blanket made of springs. However, although, let's try this. Let's go in here to geometry, modify topology. Let's unweld them. Unweld all. Why can't I find anything anymore? Hey, look at that. Yeah. Sure. Now you may need to play around with like the self-collision. Maybe turn that down. Not down all the way, but maybe kind of regulate that just a tad. So they'll kind of fall in a pattern here. They are kind of spaced out a little bit. But you can also go in here and scale. So if we overcrank the scale a little bit, or you know what we need to do? We need to overcrank, not the scale necessarily because it's doing a weird scale. What I want to do is this. Let's go in here and I'm going to say cloth. What I choose? The cloth 04? Yeah. I'm going to hold down Alt, choose cloth 04. And again, we're going to turn on that floor and we have our back here and it fits perfectly within this thing. However, I don't want it to. I want it to overextend on purpose. So BTR, go back to our regular transpose here. I want it to be too big. So I'm going to go back in here to our micro mesh plane. We're going to hold down Control. And we're just going to update this. So now they're overextended. And in fact, let's go ahead and scale this so it kind of fans them up just a little bit. Boy, this is touchy, isn't it? So now I wonder if I run the simulation. Yeah, they are much closer together. And it kind of like, this could pass for a rigid simulation, rigid body simulation, I think. Damn close. It's not perfect, but like, again, given given what this thing is meant to be and what its parameters are set up to be, that gets you pretty close. And you can also go through here. I mean, you don't even have to. You can also say, you know what, let's not unweld all. Let's just go through here and weld. And then if we run the simulation here, you can also go through here and just manually, also probably self-collision up. There you go, self-collide please. And then as you go through here, if you don't want it to fit, that's what I was looking for. So if you have fit turned off and weld turned off, play around with that. Let me know what you get. I'm gonna try one more thing. Geometry, unweld, fit off. So fit's going to overextend. That's what I was looking for. So I went in here to scale. That's what I was looking for. So I did manually overscale it. Let's pretend I did it on purpose. Two ways, everybody. You can go through there and you can overscale it on purpose, or you can turn off fit. That's what I was looking for. And then you can go through here and you can overcrank it as needed, and then you can run your simulation and have it look more like a rigid body thing. So. Cool. Yeah, and speaking of those, if you go to my ArtStation page, here is the specifics on this video here. Actually, yeah, you want to type that? This is going to drop me down to the bottom. So here's all those like little videos through here, and they're quick too. They're like 1 and 2 minutes long, so it's not super boring. You can go through there and see some of that stuff. No, thank you, Steve, for making me not be lazy. Oh, it does bump me down to the bottom anyway. Do dynamics work on fiber mesh? Yes. So Joseph just did that. We can give it that a shot too as well. Kind of impressed given its current state. It's definitely not a half-baked feature. I was also impressed. I was expecting like, because when I was growing up, when I was doing development through the years, and I started in like 05 is probably the earliest. And man, when we were doing claw simulations, there were so many limitations. Like it had to be quads. It couldn't be too many things. Of course, we were trying to run real time in an engine, but even then, it's like when I think about like Maya N-cloth and stuff, I don't see a whole lot of like, oh, dynamically just go in and go nuts with cloth. It's very much like make some cloth, run a simulation, play with a bunch of shitty settings. Yeah, this was actually really fun to use, and it wasn't too much of a pain. Is there a way to show collision thickness visually? Yeah. Are you talking? Oh yeah, talking about the inflate. That's basically when we had the shirt on the body. You know, turn that down and then rerun the simulation. You'll watch it literally just go even closer to the mesh. You already made some not bad raindrops with dynamics. Excellent. Yeah, I'm wondering. Yeah, because you can mask and then and you could also. I wonder if you could like take something and drop it on the ground and have it splat, and maybe have it splat so hard. And I'm trying to get that rebound back. I wonder if you could have it come down really fast and splat, mask, say like scrub back through the animation and maybe pull those edges back up. Are you in bed? It looks like you're lying in one. So I'm lean back. 2 reasons. Number one, it keeps my hip flexors lengthened so it doesn't pull at my back. And then also, I need to get a new chair. I think my rotator cuffs got busted, and I think this chair is partly to blame. So I'm kind of leaning over to the left. I'm an old man. I'm a broken old man. My wife can attest to that. How much faster do you think cloth workflows will now be? Way faster. I mean, way faster for me because I can just do it real quick. Have you done any toys or collectible work before? Statue work before, way back in the day. If you look up Mind's Eye Studio Gears of War statues, actually Alterton, if he's around, he did the heavy lifting on that stuff. I did a little bit of light, taking Epic's models. Was it Epic? I don't really remember. It's been a long time, a decade, but basically. I kind of posed them out. I did a little 3D printed base, and then I think Alterton and guys like him went through and actually did the modeling on like the big bronze boomers and stuff. And also a 3D. I don't know that I have. I don't have the boomer stuff or the Gears of War stuff, but I do have this guy. So this was the E3D thing, and then here's the 3D printed version of that. Now, this is old school. This was done by Onage, I believe. They're still around. They're still kicking. They still do really cool stuff. But no toy stuff. If you want to know some cool toy stuff, I loved this stream. This was ZBrush Summit. This was so cool. I loved watching this. Just because it's so foreign to me, but it was like he was talking about like different plastics and what they do and different articulations and how things get injection molded and different bendy plastics versus hard plastics and how this stuff works. So if you want to like take a little deep dive on this is a good one to do. I'll go ahead and I'll save that. I'll spit that out your way in just a second. Yes, more target simulation we went over. And again, I'm backed up, so sorry if I'm retreading. Cool. Oh, this is another thing too to consider. So while I'm going through here, when you want to test what things do, give this a shot. Let's go into a plane real quick. And while I'm doing this here's the Hasbro link. I'll scroll back up. So if you want to like go through here and be like, hey man, I see all this stuff over here. I don't know what it does. A really easy way to go through and test this functionality. Let's go in here to geometry, dynamic, smooth subdiv up to, I guess one's fine. Give a little bit of thickness because that's cool. And then we can go through here and like inflate X, Y, and Z, expand, contract. What the hell does it do? So simplify your object and see what it does. So if I go through here, inflate basically is looking at the surface normals and trying to go away from each other. If you watch the live stream demo, if you saw me inflate a plane with no gravity turned on and with inflate turned on, basically it just follows this because it's just following the surface normals are all just pointing in this direction. So inflate is just going out. However, as soon as I make this real and I do an inflate, now the surface normals, these ones are going this way and the ones in the back are going this way, and that's causing those relationships. It's still always trying to maintain that surface area, but as these are pulling, these normals are going out. These normals are like, hey, I want to go this way, but I can't because these edges are telling me I have to maintain these relationships. So it starts molding your object in an inflated way. So it's just that algorithm working in the background doing its job. So we have this pillow here doing that inflate. But anyway, what I was talking about is before we went through here and made that actually thick was just talking about just simplifying this object so that you can see a little bit more what this does. So also what also helps is like masking half of it. So if I do an inflate X, Y, and Z, you see it's going to inflate. If I go down here and I do an expand X, Y, and Z, it's going to start expand doesn't look at the surface normals. It looks at the relationship of the edges and goes, I want to expand away. So it's going to constantly be like, push away from you guys. And how it does that is it looks at those relationships. It calculates those relationships. And if this guy is this way and this guy is this way, they'll keep pushing away in that direction, just getting away from other people. So that's other points. And then that's the result you're going to get. However, if you say, you know what, I just want to expand in the Y direction, now all of a sudden this is a result you get. So it's just expanding in one direction. Again, if we turn on the floor, Y up, Z forward, X across. So let's expand in the X direction, left to right. Hey, look at that. You get a much different result. Let's go ahead and turn on Smooth Subdiv up to 2. Cool. Or we want to go in here and expand in the X and Z direction. Run simulation. Cool. And if you do X, actually, X and Z is not gonna, X and Y is where things are going to actually happen. So there's an XY simulation. If we just expand in the Z direction, oh, it actually did do something. I wonder if it's not, oh. Yeah, so on a flat plane, Z is front and back. These edges, the relationships are static. It doesn't have anything to do in this direction because there is no that direction. Remember, this thickness doesn't exist. It's just a flat plane. So there's no directionality to it. If I go through here and I'm like, hey, here's a little direction for you, now it'll start simulating in the Z, or it should. Or maybe, you know what, let's do this. There we go. Whoa! So now it has some directionality. It may take a while because there's not a whole lot of change in there. You got to give it something. However, X and Y, whoa, let's crank this down to 1. X and Y work like so. Because there is X directionality, like there is relationships in the X direction. There's points to move away from there, and there's relationships in the up and down direction. There's just nothing in that Z direction, so it doesn't do anything. Contract is interesting. Deflate is the opposite of inflate. If we do inflate in the Y direction only, it doesn't. Expand is interesting because it wants to increase surface area. Inflate's not going to. So basically, if we want to do inflate, actually, let me get my notes. I have. Why did I close them? Or I never had them open to begin with because I'm a dummy. Drive. So here's all my simulation notes that I have. But basically what I'm doing is going through this portion because this is how I understood it. I was like, okay, let's do expand and contract in X, Y, and Z on a flat plane just to, again, make this a little simpler to use in my brain. And you can also do expand and inflate at the same time. So as you're running an inflate, remember, you can also be running an expand and get, whatever result that is. So food for thought. And again, inflate, when you're doing the pillow, it's looking at normal face it's trying to maintain the relationships of your surface area and then also pushing away out based on its surface normal. Expand is looking at interpersonal relationships and trying to get away from each other. So between those two, you can come up with some really interesting inflate and expand things depending on the shape of the object. Now, this object answers some questions very simply, but it's going to be a little misleading. So if you want to go through here and try a cylinder and then say make polymesh 3D, let's go down here. I'm just going to use I'm like, oh, I'm demoing. I shouldn't use my custom menu. Use your custom menu. Don't dig through stuff. Everybody in the thing was like, oh, ZBrush is UI. Can't do it. I'm like, the UI is what you make it. If you can't make ZBrush a good UI, that's on you. That means you can't make a good UI. Not that ZBrush can't make one. ZBrush has the information you need organized in ways that make sense. Like there's dynamics, there's macros. That makes sense. If you don't like that, then you can change it. Nobody's stopping you, and it's real easy to do. Go to the very intro basics to ZBrush on my YouTube channel. Intro to ZBrush. Iteration concept. I forget what I called it, but you know where it is. So over here on the niche geometry, we're going to hit Control D a couple times. We're going to mask this part out, and now you can run these relationships on the 3D objects. Now we're doing, let's do like X and Z inflate, X and Z expand, and now we have more axes to work on. So now you can kind of see, in a little bit, again, a more controlled environment, what exactly these things are going to do, or how they're going to result in, there's a little X and Z. And then we can, and you don't have to also don't have to do, we can do X, Y, and Z inflate, or maybe just X and Z inflate, because X, Y inflate's also up and down. You can also crank this amount down. So just add a little bit of inflate, and then kind of push out. And also, here's another cool thing. As we're going through here and we're using the transpose line, we can go through here. BTC is our cloth transpose. And again, it's running these iterations based on movement. So as we're moving this, it's going through, and see how it's slowly inflating as I just sit here and wiggle? That wiggle counts as movement. So what you can do is, as you're moving this stuff, it's still running those instructions. So keep that in mind. That's also another way where you can go through here, instead of using simulation, just go in here and just be like, let me just kind of get that simulation going. Or if you want a little bit more, you can go in here and kind of start twisting and see if that gives you, something interesting. Again, your movement every time you move, it goes, oh, I need to calculate. You have cloth turned on. I'm going to calculate. And then as you're doing that, it's going through and calculating in that direction. So you're just kind of telling it, hey, I'm kind of moving you. Start calculating. And then if you have any settings over here, it'll do that. So we can go in here and like maybe deflate in the X and Z. You know, start rotating this around, or maybe up and down gives you a better result, or maybe just left and right, front to back. Or maybe it doesn't do anything. Maybe if it's small enough movement probably isn't going to do much. But if you do a big movement, now you're getting some crazy twists, you know? So there's that. Also, cloth twister. Cloth brushes are super easy. So we did cover this in the demo, but I want to reiterate how easy cloth brushes are to make. If I want to remake this brush, it's basically BS spiral. Go through here, and there's my spiral brush. It's just moving geometry around. But if I want to make a cloth brush, all you got to do is go to Brush, Elasticity, Simulation Iterations up. And basically, simulation iterations means at 100, it's going to look at the simulation iterations up there in dynamics and go, okay, I'm going to, every time I move this brush, you're going to calculate to the fullest extent that you have set in your global parameters of your simulation iterations. If you drop that down, I don't know why you exactly would drop that down. It's probably a little bit safer to be like, hey, brush is at 100, and if you don't want it to simulate, or you want less simulation iterations, just drop this number down, I think. It may not be right, but that makes sense in my brain right now. But anyway, so here is the spiral brush we just had, now simulating with cloth. Now at this point, you can go in here and say, okay, on brushed off, and now it's going to simulate the entire object. And we still have deflate and expand turned on. So as I'm doing this movement over here, it's deflating and expanding everything that's unmasked. So there you go. Cool, huh? So it's super easy. So brush, you know what, go into your brush, clay brush, or clay trim dynamic, or clay tubes. Go through here, turn on simulation iterations, start folding, and you can turn this stuff off if you want to just have this drive your cloth. And then now as you go through here, you're going to see, oh, it's starting to pull in, and hold down Alt and O. Now this is a cloth brush. It's not a very effective cloth brush. You can crank the Z intensity up maybe, or maybe change the alpha to something better. I don't know. Play around with that. Come up with good cloth stuff. Yeah, there's so much cool stuff. Sorry, let me get caught up here. Can you use masking for dynamics, or do you have to simulate the entire object? Yeah, we just use masking. And of course, if you watch the live demo, or like this one here on my thing, we did a comforter where we essentially did an inflate, and we used the polygroups to mask so that it would inflate through the mask. Masking is very important. In fact, one of the reasons it's important, plane 3D, edit, make polymesh 3D, dynamic, smooth, fine, thickness, yes. There's also an unmask. We can go through here and we can unmask this. So by default, unmask is off, which means when I go through here and I simulate this, if I get to a BTC and go like, hey, I want to move this, it's going to want to move the unmasked points. However, if I say unmasked, now I can go through here and I can use this as the driver. So let's go ahead and turn on some self-collision. And again, go slow enough so that it can kind of catch up. I'm going to go through here and I'm just going to roll this cloth up. So now we have like a little blanket roll here. And then also we can go in here, back to gravity, turn on floor collision, and we can just have this thing, you know, run the simulation here. Where's my floor at? Turn that off. Gravity, set direction, floor collision, turn, oh yeah, so unmasked is on and I have nothing masked. So it's like, what do you want me to do? You told me to only simulate where I'm masked. Not going to simulate. Duh. So you can go in here and then wherever it's masked, now it'll run the simulation. Of course, we want to turn on floor collision and we want to do the whole thing. So turn off, on masked, and boom, there you go. Now you have a carpet roll. Now let's change that gravity amount maybe. And then floor self collision, we'll turn that down just so it kind of collapses and kind of stays rolled up. It looks like when I rolled it, it went a little bit tight, but that's how you can kind of do that. Pretty neat. Yes, a character face moving underneath the mask. Yeah, you would basically just pull a plane. In fact, if you want to go through these projects here, this is a good one. So we'll do the sim head cover here. This is cool. It'll tell you instructions on what to do. We're going to go in here. I'm just going to turn off this texture map. So you can load up texture maps, no problem. It's totally cool. I'm also going to go in here and go to polyframe. And you know what? Let's change this over to skin shader 4. Boy, that's dark. There we go. So now what I can do is I can go to BTC and I can kind of move this around, and we want to make sure we have a collision volume here. So as I go through, this is going to start colliding with that head, and I can go through here and we can start pulling this face through here. So now you've got this cloth. And of course, your collision volume, how firm it is. This is kind of a softer, more springy cloth here. So trying to think what else I could do on here. That's the basics. What type of hardware do dynamics like this? I mean, ZBrush in general will run on a toaster. However, I don't run on a toaster. Let me see if I can go in here too. We're using the AMD Ryzen Threadripper 3970X 32 core. We got 64 gig of RAM, which I'm probably going to punch up to 128 one of these days. But one thing, if you did miss this, it actually scales astoundingly well. So if I go through here and I'm like, let's turn off this head here, turn off the collision volume, and we just want to drop this down to the floor as it's colliding. I don't know. A while ago, it was lighting up. It was actually distributing 100% through here. I think maybe it was. Let me try this. Was it the dog that was doing it? Now I'm interested. Now I'm wondering if does the type of object matter, or did I have a specific setting that was taxing it in a very specific way? I need to track these things down. I have to know. I don't know why I have to know. I don't care that much, but gravity, floor collision, self collision, gravity strength, simulate. Yeah, that did do much better. Interesting. So yeah, when let's make it so I can see it real quick. So I run this simulation on this object. I wonder if it just wasn't enough. It was yeah, it's a hat. It has 15 polygons. Who cares? This simulation actually has a lot more going on. So maybe, but see, it distributed beautifully. However, I don't think you'll need a monster machine like this, but doesn't hurt. And honestly, if you do other things like rendering, video encoding, any number of things that I do day to day, or multitasking, I'm doing ZBrush. I've got videos encoding. I'm pretending to pay attention in a meeting at work. All these things I'm doing at once. I don't need to worry about resources. Me not worrying, my stress levels like this, big win. You can't put a price on that, or maybe you can, but boy, that's a top dollar. Please make a Batwing example like you did in Marvelous Designer. Yeah, so I did a Marvelous membrane that animated, and I think I'll give that a shot. Let me get some more basic stuff. I might have to think about that one. Yeah, I'm kind of relaxed tonight. Can you please try to blur the edges of cement in the water, spreading and splashing at the edges? Is that possible? You can do it in the texture. You can't blur the edges of geometry, but if you're working through here, and it's hey, I want to kind of fade this out. Remember that in ZBrush, if we go through here, it'll respect, this is UV kind of weird, it'll respect transparency. So basically you would just need to UV the object, give it a transparent. In fact, when I was doing this car here, how I did the smoke off of this car, so you know what, let me get some images here. We're going to desktop, ZB demo renders car. So this smoke right here is literally just cloth that's been twisted and simulated, and I put liquid on and I have gravity kind of pull and twist it around, and I literally just painted cloth, or I painted smoke on there and I put transparency on it. So when you watch me do that, there's me shattering some glass, but yeah, the smoke itself was super easy. I literally just painted and a super nasty cartoony smoke on a plane here. Yeah, there it is. This is the cloth I painted, or the smoke I painted. and then I ran dynamic simulation on it. It kind of stretched the texture that I painted. That's just poly paint. Threw that in the key shot, and then we did threw it in here and played around a little bit with like the opacity. I just plugged the texture into the texture and the opacity and played around some opacity settings, and then that's what turned into this cloth right here, or this smoke right here. Super dumb, but got the job done. So yeah, you can do that. It'll be with textures though. How dense are these meshes that you're simulating? Kind of depends. Like this one's not too bad, but I mean, it can handle quite a bit. It's going to cap out at 250,000 polygons. You can crank it up. You can go up to 1,000,000 polygons and it'll simulate it. Might tax your system a bit, but honestly, I haven't got to the point where I needed more than 250,000. Because here's the thing, like mostly what you're looking for with cloth simulation is the primary and secondary reads. These big reads here, anything that's like micro simulated, I would probably be more inclined just to use a brush with an alpha and kind of, or like memory folds where you just go in and stamp like some memory folds on there. Like I wouldn't simulate a memory fold. Would I? Nah. I would stamp a memory fold. I wouldn't. I would simulate this. I mean, and again, like we were talking about before, you can divide this up, and you can simulate it. You can go through here and like brush, cloth, hook, and just move this stuff around. Let me turn off X symmetry, and you'll get littler folds, but like, when's the last time you saw something like this? This looks like somebody's, like an elephant elbow. Hey, that's why you would want these wrinkled elephant elbows. Even then, I gotta think we're getting out of primary and secondary folds and getting into like, is that like surface? Is that like a normal map? If it's not breaking the silhouette? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you can get cool stuff, so knock yourself out. But Zapal to use dynamics to drop items like nails or others. Your short video shows an example of broken truck glass. Now that was just literally shattered geometry that I created. However, we did earlier dropped a bunch of springs. You know what? Maybe I'll go through and I'll do a. I just got to do it now. It's gonna be a live long stream. I wasn't expecting to stay up, but let's just do it. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to grab this. We're going to say BI brush insert industrial parts. Hit W. Go through here. Just drop some. Let's drop some Phillips heads. I don't feel comfortable saying let's drop some nuts. So we're going to go through here and we have this. And right now it may be. You know, it doesn't matter if it's unified or not because we know the secret now. So we're going to go through here. And we're going to say, okay, we've got this sitting out here. Let's go and grab a plane here. Oops. Make polymesh 3D. And we don't even need that many. So geometry is reconstruct down twice. Let's delete higher. Let's go in here to our MicroPoly, smoothness down, MicroPoly on, control tap, grab that. So now these are on here. We're not going to fit because now we can scale these down. Oops. Now we can scale these down or overcrank them as needed. And now I can also go through here and say geometry, modify topology. Let's make this so you can see it. Modify unweld all. We're going to turn on a little bit of self collision. We're going to turn on floor collision, run the simulation, and boy, that really pushed them out, didn't it? Self collision 1, floor collision gravity. Not inflating. Oh, turn off. Oh, collision volume's off. Wonder why it's exploding all out. Let's do this. Let's turn MicroPoly off. It's stopping. It's not. Let's do this. Let's say, whoa. Weld points. You would think a custom menu would make me faster. We're going to go through a dynamic subdivision of 1. MicroPoly on. Let's go ahead and say apply that. Dynamic. MicroPoly on. Maybe it's because we scaled it down. I don't know. Let's try. This is where normally like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna play around and then fix it in editing so I look like a moron. But you know what? I guess what it is if they're too small, it's gonna be like they're padded with some filler. But if they're as big or bigger, let's say like 1.5, than the actual object, and we don't have fit turned on, and we say again unweld all, right? Wait, what did he yell at me? I have set of it. Oh, stupid. Delete lower. I do. Unweld all. I was like, ZBrush is wrong. Oh, wait. I'm an idiot. Okay, that's a little bit better. So you're going to want to make sure your scale is somewhat relative to your to your padding scale, or your what's the word? Words. How do they work? You know what I'm saying. Cloth dynamics be good. Okay, how would you compare this to Marvelous Designer? It seems like cloth dynamics would be good for more stylized stuff, but something quick. But Marvelous Designer seems like would be king for realistic cloth dynamics. It's king until it isn't. And it's also, the cloth you're going to get out of here is only as good as what you can make. Am I the best cloth maker? No, I've been making cloth for like a day. Same as everybody else in the world, minus like a handful of people at Pixelogic. Guaranteed, somebody's going to figure out the right settings, the right workflows to go, hey, here's kick-ass cloth. That's how you do it. I certainly wouldn't be brazen enough to go, never in a million years would anybody get anything more than stylized cloth out of ZBrush. That's craziness. That's like saying germ theory. That's meaningless. Germ theory is nonsense. Who says that? You know what I mean? It's hard to say. I would imagine people will get just fine results out of cloth, out of ZBrush. And also, this is its first iteration. You know, ZBrush is constantly updating stuff. People are going to come out with better settings. ZBrush is going to keep their eyes open. They're going to see, and also the people at ZBrush are always 5 steps ahead of me and you guys. So they already got, they got stuff in the hopper ready to go, or they're testing things as we speak, or they tested things 6 months ago that they're still kind of refining. So as far as like, this being the first foray, it's ZBrush 2021.0. There's going to be a 0.1, 0.2, 0.4, 0.5, and a 2022. And every single time, it's going to get crazier and crazier because that's what they do. That's how they are. Interesting test to play with Noisemaker and Dynamics. Yeah, it would. I did a little bit of, let me see down here. So if you go and watch this comforter demo here, this one here, I did use dynamics. So you can use geometry to mask and then you can inflate through that. You can also just use Noisemaker to go through and like make, I guess I can show you instead of me. This is an awful song, by the way. I don't know what I was thinking. The other ones are actually like, the Mech Tube one was actually like, this one, the video is what it is, but this is a cool song. So anyway, I like the song more than I like the actual content. You can inflate through that. But for the just turn the sound off when you watch this comforter one. But basically, it's like a feel-good, like corporate, like you're in a meeting waiting for the meeting to start, and they're gonna try and pitch you on some shitty, tracking software. So this is the geometry version of inflating through and creating which we demoed. And then over here is where we have, okay, maybe you don't want to deal with geometry, or you don't know what that's going to be exactly. So here's where you can use Noisemaker and masking to kind of go through here and just use Noisemaker to mask. So here it is with squares. You can also go through here, and of course it's Noisemaker, so you can put on hex tiles if you want to, and then mask through these hex tiles and get a hex tile pattern as your cloth. So I have pretty monster monitors. I don't know if I have a video on that specifically. Actually, I do. So if you go to my workstation, my YouTube channel. So here's my current workstation. I don't think I have any videos of me actually standing at it. But what I'm actually using right now, this is my old house, and I'm also sitting down. I have a KVM switch. This is a standing desk, but I can't stand up because the KVM switch is connected. Very expensive cables, very expensive KVM switch, very expensive computers. And I'm afraid if I move this up, and there's a ton of cables too, because I'm switching between multiple computers. So that reminds me to turn off my other computer. That's why it's so damn hot in here. So that's why I'm not standing up at my desk like I used to. But anyway, yeah, I've got 2 Dell 34-inch curved ultra-wide monitors, and I have them stacked on top of each other. So, and it's not that I'm like leaning back, but it's like my shoulder is messed up and this chair sucks. It's a Herman Miller chair, but it sucks. Sorry. And then, or at least maybe I'm just old and broken and the chair is fine. Probably that's it. But anyway, yeah, you can definitely use Noisemaker. Does it support custom old UI or need to be remade? Whenever there's a point release, I'll keep my custom UI. When there's a full release, rebuild it. And I've written, it's easy for me to say, you have no idea how many times I've rebuilt this damn thing, so I can do it in my sleep. And also, I don't change my interface that much. I would suggest, though, take a screenshot of your interface, take a screenshot of your custom menus, and rebuild it from scratch every single major release, 2021, 2022, or I think it was 2020. I don't know, whatever the other big releases were, rebuild it from scratch. You don't want that to be causing you like some stupid little thing in your menu that's not compatible that it's looking for, having an error or a corrupted something or other with, or putting a gremlin in your workspace. Not worth it. Rebuild it from scratch. I do. I don't want that to be something weird that I'm like, this is acting weird. Why is it breaking all the time? And it's something stupid like, oh, my custom menu had an old button. No thanks. Yeah, and now you can use these as collision volumes. Good point. So now, you know what? Let's see. This is why I like live streaming with you guys, because you guys have way better ideas than I do. So we have this here. So let's go through here and we'll say MicroPoly. Let's go ahead and apply this. So this is actual geometry now. Let's go ahead and say non-active. Yes, yes, yes. So we're going to go through here and we're going to say append a plane 3D here. And let's say yes, you, and yes, you, and thickness, yes. And also, let's subdivide this one time just because we want a little bit of resolution here. And then now I think, of course it will. And again, if it's pulling through or it's not giving you exactly what you want, go up here. Oh, my simulation iterations are way down. So turn those back up. And then again, turn gravity down if you need to. And also, you know, that's not quite firm enough. You know, so here we can go through. And another cool thing too, just real quick, something I want to show off real quick. So we can do a cylinder. Another way you can do a cylinder that won't have polarized caps as much. We're going to go in here, grab polar, blah, 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 go in here to initialize, and let's do like a 12, a 12, and a 12 cylinder in the Y. And I always like to do a unify here. So we have this, and I'm going to go ahead and we're going to say delete polygroup all. And if you haven't seen, no, not polygroup all, polygroup island. So if you haven't seen the new Edge Extrusion, so edges can now snap to surfaces here. So any other polygon, let's do this. We go BTO, oops, BTO. There we go. We have topology here. Tap off. Let's make it single size here. We're going to say split mask points. So now we have geometry. I'm going to turn on transparency. And if you want to see these edges a little bit better, remember you have dynamic. So even though you can extrude single-sided edges now, you can also go through here. I'm going to change the offset to here. And you know what? Let me just do a quick here. So in ZModeler here, you now have an extrude edge loop, and you can go here and you can say, you know what, also while you're doing that, go ahead and snap the surface. So while I'm going through and extruding these faces, I also tap Alt, and it also stick. So now I can go through here and I can be like, hey, tap Alt once to pull one out, tap Alt twice to pull all these out, and tap Alt or hold down Alt to pull out through here. So again, tap Alt once, twice, and you can kind of go through, and you can even do triangles. So you can just go through here and be like, boop, triangle, transparency. You know what would help if you guys could see it. There we go. So now again, we're just extruding edges. We're snapping points. We're making, you know, geometry as we go. We also have in here you have your move brush. So we can go in here again to our ZModeler brush, hover over a point, and in here you can say snap to surface. So now you can go through here, and it's got an attraction. So you can go boop and boop. So let's kind of stick these together here, and maybe, I don't know, try it. There you go. So that's some new functionality for you. Another thing to consider too is this, we have cloth dynamics. So if I go through here and I subdivide this thing and we say, I guess we just leave that alone. We're on the surface here. And you know what? I don't even need thickness. That's fine. So we're going to turn transparency on, and we have a surface underneath and we're snapping edges and stuff like that. Also, when we go through here, we have move. So if I go through here and I calculate this collision volume, and if I turn either, I can put on under move, I can go in here to brush elasticity and I could say simulation iteration. So now as I'm moving these points around, it'll stick to the surface because it's recalculating that it's got a collision volume. Let's also turn that inflate down so there's no padding in there. It's not a big deal. It's not that far away to where it's like I can't just go to project all and it just projects back to the surface. That's not a big deal. But yeah, through here, you can move multiple points around. I guess delete lower so we can see them. And now you can kind of stick to the surface. It kind of pulls along the surface, or at least it should. There's also a brush cloth move as well. So you can kind of play around with that and that'll stick to the surface. And again, even if it doesn't like stick perfectly, you can just immediately go here to project all if you need to, but it looks like it's actually following that collision volume pretty well. But again, we can go through here and yeah, you have the new extrude, edge loop, poly loop. You can go through here and just like, oh, another thing cool, that's cool, you can hold down a control and just keep pulling across to get more, or you can go through here and you can say, what is it, num rows. So you can go through here and it's like, I want 5 rows, and then hold down control and be like, no, I want more or less. So there's a couple different options there, but it's fairly intuitive once you get, you know, kind of play around with it a little bit. Again, I'm going to have videos on all this and I'm going to go slow and I'm not going to be doing a tired live stream or anything like that. So new snap to surface functionality, new edge extrusion functionality. In fact, let's just do this. There you go. That's my mouse points. So if I go through here and I'm like, okay, give me an extrude edge loop. Boy, I'm getting tired now. What was I going to show? Oh, right. I don't need any of this. You know what? Turn off my collision volume. So basically, as I'm going through here and I'm like, this is just free, and I can tap shift, and that's a planar angle. So now it's going to go up or down, and then if I tap shift, this is going to be a perpendicular angle. So here it is, perpendicular to the point, to the edge I'm pulling out. So you can basically in the upper left-hand corner, you can see free angle, planar angle, perpendicular angle. So here's planar, it's pulling straight out from this plane, and you can also confine it. So if you want to do like, you know what, I want to do a parallel sides, this will go through and just pull straight out. And again, I can make it snap to that planar angle, and then I can go through here and snap the planar angle. I'm going to tap shift and snap it to the perpendicular angle. Boop. And then now you can go through here and just tap alt and then be like, pull out these walls here and, you know, continue doing whatever you need to do. Like so. Cool stuff. I think I was doing something before I got sidetracked, but I don't remember what it was. Cool. Can you do a destruction simulation with mesh? Yes. So if you saw the demo, or if you go to my YouTube channel here, you can see me wreck a whole bunch of shit. So here's a truck being completely wrecked. Can show how chainmail could be created. It's really tough nowadays. You basically need a mesh, and you need a dynamic, and you need a MicroPoly, and then you can go over here and say chainmail, and you're basically done. Another thing you can do, let's say fit scale, yeah. You can go through your brush cloth BTK. And again, this isn't like great cloth geometry. We just extruded some edges. So obviously you'd want to start with something a little nicer, but you can see how difficult chainmail is now. Yeah, so I would definitely rebuild your custom UI every bit you release. And also, can you export the animation as FBX or as a limit to the disk? Yes. So a couple times before this, we've done twice now where we can go to the layers, and you can record to an MDD file. Can you have more than one collider? Yes. Anything that's visible and you hit collision volume, it's going to calculate in your scene. Does this have fishnets? Yes. That's one of the, and if it doesn't, just make your own. Like I have, if you go to my YouTube channel, it's like micro mesh fishnets and nano mesh fishnets. Basically, you would just do the exact same thing, only put it in here as a MicroPoly. Dynamics to create a rain effect is able to make that quite easy. Spheres as a nano mesh. and some dynamic tweaks. Cool idea to spread via video. Absolutely. You spread it via video and I'll watch it. So there's a limit on how many points can be simulated, or am I reading the wrong documentation wrong? There's a limit. The default's set to 250,000. You can crank it up to 1 million. I've never gotten anywhere near this. Again, like we mentioned before, like the more geometry you have, the more calculations it's doing in a smaller area. So it's basically going to like give you a bunch of micro folds. So that's okay for like super duper small geometry, but like even in Marvelous Designer, I was only looking for primary and secondary reads and then alphas to create my micro stuff. I didn't need to simulate micro stuff. Yes, ZBrush 2021. Can an animated morph target deform a dynamic cloth object? That is fancy thinking. I like where you're going. I don't know that I could do that with this current setup, but I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't the case eventually. I would not be surprised at all because, you know, smarter people than me are out there. That's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, probably. Because I'm trying to think of like, yeah, you can animate a collision volume, but it recalculates the collision volume. So basically, you'd have to set up. I mean, hell, maybe you can even do something under the hood or some weird macro or something where it's basically like collision volume. You can save it out as an MDD or even as a layer. You don't even have to go that fancy. And then it would just, you probably need to drop the resolution a bit to get it to calculate fast enough. But you could do collision volume, recalc, sim, collision volume, recalc, sim, collision volume, recalc, sim. Sounds like a macro could step through that. Sounds like that's something under the hood that can happen fairly easily. It's easy for me to say that, being like, just do it. But that's essentially what you would need to have calculating. And there's probably much faster, more optimized ways to achieve that, which is the under the hood method that they would, somebody would implement. But basically, like, yeah, as the collision volume is moving, constantly be recalculating so that as the cloth simulation is being driven by the collision volume, reverse, basically. I could see somebody doing that. Yes, hotkey. Yes, and you can blur masks for sure. Do you see him expanding on dynamics and more official rigid stuff? I'll lever ZBrush to be my one-stop shop. Probably. Like, why not? They're all about like, if it's cool for artists and helps them create better and faster, they're all about it. Do you have best practices for slower computers to get the most out of your dynamics? Really, I think like you may not be able to dynamically simulate a huge number of polygons as fast as some computers, but like you'll still get the same results. It's still the same calculations running. So really just going between this gravity strength and simulation iterations is your best bet. And if you have to simulate a little slower, who cares if you can simulate like 10 seconds faster, meditate for 10 more seconds. Cool. Sorry, I got really exciting stuff. You know what? Did I do anything that I didn't demo during the live stream that you guys might find interesting? Let's go to, it's on my desktop, duh. Body topology contract. So I think here, I don't remember the exact settings. So I kind of played around with this too, where it's like I have, this is the original sculpt here. And just like kind of a muscly body. And then here's the Nick Z body topology that I moved into place. I just basically went through here and masked and transposed and pushed these. You can see he's not anywhere really even near this, but essentially what I did was I had this new topology, this good topology selected, and then this kind of basically Dynamesh to snap to. I went to collision volume. I think I cranked it up, inflate down to 0, recalculate it, contract, maybe. Oh, turn off gravity. Yeah, and it like snapped into place. Like, I mean, that's how fast it was. Boop. And really, you really don't even need to run it that much. You just basically need to touch it, and it goes bloop, and it just finds the nearest vert, and it's like perfectly shrink wrapped. I can go through here and just hit projectile, and even through here, it's like, okay, I want to make sure I grab everything. So just go into your projection settings and say, what? Projection distance, so maybe crank it up a little bit, and then Control D, project all, Control D, project all, Control D, project all, and then now I have new topology from that claw simulation, and really it was like 5 seconds worth of work. I like take the topology, move, not 5 seconds, 3 minutes worth of work to kind of move the old topology into place, run that simulation with collision volume and contract, and went, found the nearest and kind of sat on it, and then I just projected, and then brand new topology. So if I want to go through, you know, look at that. Neat. And again, you have a collision volume now. So if you need to go through with your move brushes and like move topology around, or you have like snapping to surface with transparency on with the new ZModeler tools, go through and do that. What focal length is suitable for a likeness portrait sculpt? Not a dumb question. If I remember correctly, I did a little bit of this for Call of Duty back in the day. It kind of depends on, here's the real answer, it depends on what the photograph you're trying to match is, what focal length is suitable, I think. Because like, okay, so if you're trying to take a beautiful portrait, I don't know, like a 50 millimeter lens, 50 millimeter lens, I don't know, whatever, like a good portrait focal length is what you would Google for that. But really find out what the focal length is of the person taking the reference photos and match it, and that'll help you match your reference better. But if it's just for like a render, I don't know, Google it. But I want to say it's like 50 millimeter prime or something, or maybe I'm thinking of photogrammetry because that's the least amount of distortion. I don't know. I get some performance issues unless I limit the threads to 16 of 32. I haven't ran into that yet. Also, there's some performance stuff in here. So if you go in here to preferences, performance, I want to say there was some new stuff, and there's also some like Microsoft, some stuff that Microsoft and their Wacom or their Microsoft Windows Ink stuff was doing some weird stuff. So there might be some performance issues when really it's not performance, and Microsoft being fabulous. How are the retopology tools now? Really good. We covered it a little bit. We might be able to go a little bit deeper. We got about 20 minutes before I fall asleep. Contract on like X and Z to kind of squish them, or would you mask the shape of the pleat and then sim? I'd have to play around with that. What I might do is just throw a model at it. Somebody else in the beta did pleats. I'm trying to remember how they did it. Any news about the UV editor? Maybe some upcoming change or something else? I'm just thinking about changing my pipeline and work with UVs and ZBrush makes me suffer. It would be nice to stay in ZBrush and don't jump between several apps. I mean, yeah, I do general like pelt mapping UVs in here. As far as like any crazy UVs, I wouldn't know. Cool. Any updated how your desk is set up or picture video? No, and it's really not. It's not good looking. It's basically a desk. I've got 3 computers surrounding me, 2 huge monitors, a KVM, and a really boring beige room. And mostly it's messy over there. Just off camera, it's a disaster. And also remember, this isn't just claw simulation. It's also ZBrush. So if you need to do piping, or you need to do modeling, or you just need to model something and sim it, pretty quick. You think with engines like Unreal 5 artists will know how long I have to retopo? Yeah, for static environment meshes, maybe. MD helps you with resizing cloth to different body types. Yes, and you could do the exact same thing in here too if you wanted to. It just sims to, you contract the shirts to different bodies. Cool. This is not a new stream chat. This is basically ZBrush just launched, and I figured I could come on here and do a little bit quick demo, just because I was seeing some stuff on Facebook that was like, ZBrush's dynamics doesn't work. Look, it's stretched. And I was like, you try a little bit. Like, there's some settings in here. The default settings are fine for some things. You need to tweak one value. And I was kind of like, I know it's Facebook, but come on. I don't know why I go on Facebook. What am I, a boomer? Retopo was like Quadra, add or delete edge loop. I mean, yeah. But of course, you could have done that a long time ago. And also what I might do too, if I just go through here and it's like, okay, give me a head Z tool. Oh, this is another thing I did too. You know what, let's see if I can open this up. So you have to remember ZModeler can also just insert edge loops. So it's not like, yeah, oh, I can hold down control and insert edge loops. Well, you can also save a hotkey to different versions of ZModeler if you want a hotkey to have that. And you can also store different functionality. In fact, all the functionality you wanted for that ZModeler brush that we did, like snap to surface, edge loops, point snap to surface, or anything else, you can save that as a new ZModeler tool, bring it in, save it as a, I'll show you in a second. Save it as a startup brush, and then you can assign a hotkey to it, and then you can just immediately hit a hotkey and go straight to your Z modeler retopology brush, or like 3 variations of your Z modeler retopology brush that can actually, because when you store a hotkey for any other program, it's like, oh, I need a hotkey for bevel, and I need a hotkey for split point, and I need a hotkey for this, and now you got 50 different hotkeys. In ZBrush, because you have access to go through here. Because you have access to 3 different things, you have edge actions, targets, and modifiers with the same brush. So we have face actions and targets. You have edge actions, targets, and modifiers, and point actions, modifiers. Every single time you save a ZModeler brush, you can affect 3 different things. So just if you assign a hotkey, you're basically assigning a hotkey to 3 different actions. So instead of having like, well, I have a bevel for one hotkey, and I have an inset for another hotkey, and I have a point whatever for another point split for another hotkey, you can store all of those onto one hotkey, and then you'll have 3 actions for that. So also something to consider. Save yourself some keys. But yeah, I can show you that real quick. And also I can show you one more thing too. If we go in here to head retopology, tune. This is something I didn't actually set up, so bear with me. So we've got some head topology here, and I want to go through here and I say, okay, let's do a, and this is basically what I was doing. I was going through here, and I have video on that as well. If you go through and you just watch me, the ZBrush 2021 dynamic topology, it's me basically trying different topology things out, retopologizing this face, taking this face and like slapping it onto another face and then finishing out the head. It's all in there. But one thing I did do was I took this and I was like, okay, so we can go down here and it has, you can UV this thing, and then once you have UVs on it, you can say morph UV, and then you can grab this. Let's go ahead and turn bump down to 0. And let's just grab this here. I'm going to say brush, create insert mesh. Actually, you know what? We don't even need to do that. Escape out of that. Let's just do this. Let's say clone, go here to my head, and we've got this sitting here, and I'm going to say append that face. Go out of solo mode so I can see it. Let's turn off double. There we go. So I've got this face here. Whoa! Need to weld it. Weld that face. There we go. Move this out in front. Oh, come on. Also, self-collision off. Weld on. Did I clone that and it was like morph UV'd still? Okay, so I guess clone isn't going to work. What we're going to do is, so what is this capture? I don't want to do an insert mesh brush. Think. I thought clone was going to do it. Or did I clone it and I grabbed the wrong damn one? Let me see, delete this one. Append. Nope. Okay. Okay, fine. Brush. Create insert mesh. New. Delete. Head. X symmetry. Draw this out. Split. Mass points. Flip. Weld. Move this out. Transparency mode. And also let's go in here to the draw menu so we can do this. Nope. Preferences. Draw. Because I want to take this back opacity down so I can see a little bit better. And so now I can kind of line up, okay, this on the nose here needs to come in a little bit. Oops. Do I still have that on? So stupid. Last simulation done. So we're just going to kind of move this stuff around, move this so it fits the brow a little bit, move this mouth down so it kind of goes to where my mouth's going to go. And then we're going to hit BTC, turn off transparency, and I think just wrap this after we calculate the collision volume here. And contract, you know what? Maybe I keep contract on. Yeah. So now we have a new geometry, although maybe we don't need to contract. That was a cool fold though. Yeah, so you can basically just kind of wrap that face to there. Of course, I seem to be a bit off. Is this simulating? Yeah, collision volume, 4 collision. Okay. That's basically what I did. Just go through here and kind of slap that new topology on there, and then I went through, and again, you can go through here and you can either use the move brush and have it snap to that collision volume, or you can just go through here and move this stuff around and then just do a quick projectile. But anyway, as far as like how this stuff works, transparency, you don't even need a collision volume. As long as you have something visible, you can go through here and say, okay, edge loop, go through here and just say, you know, snap to surface, and then as you pull these things out, it'll go ahead and snap the surface. However, you need to tap shift to go to free angle, and then tap Alt, so you can do single edge, entire edge loop, and then depending on your topology, actually it's not doing a full edge loop, you can just hold down, you can see it down there at the bottom, hold on, skin shader. You can tap Alt, it's going all the way around, or you can go mostly around, or you can go single edge. And then when you're doing single edge, I'll just go through here and snap. You can also just snap to a triangle if you want, just pull this on and over. Maybe not. Well, you can also go in here to move and just snap that over if you want to. For triangle, just kind of welding verts, that kind of thing. Or you can just go through here and you can say, you know, collapse edge, whatever you want to do. And if you want to insert an edge, you can save a hotkey for that. If it's like, hey, I want to insert an edge here, no problem. And then again, you can just do projectile. You can store a hotkey for insert edge if you want to. Or you can just go through here and be like, okay, extrude back to extrude edge loop. And just pull these in. Do deep, or like even faster, just go through here, tap Alt, so it's going to pull out as you go, and then that'll kind of snap. And again, you can maybe even turn your shift key into you know, where you want to kind of like spread that geometry around. We can go through here and be like, okay, if I hold down shift, it'll smooth it, and then I can go here and projectile. But also, since we have collision volumes now, if I hold down shift, I wonder if I go in here to brush and say simulation iterations and I hold down shift on brushed, so it's going to contain it. It's wanting to simulate everything for some reason. I'll have to play around with that. But it's also, you know, you can go through here and you can use the move brush for the simulation iterations, or just have a hotkey for projectile. But it seems to be sticking pretty good. Sorry if I missed something. Really please. Cool. Any thoughts about the table for standing? A bunch of monstrous monitors, pretty cool. How about the spine comfort? Yeah, my KVM. I'm a little nervous. So after I'm done with all the ZBrush stuff, I got all my videos recorded. I've got some recorded. I'm having to do it nights and weekends. So here and there, I'm getting the stuff recorded. I'll get it out on my YouTube channel so you guys can have a little bit more in-depth conversation. I'm getting to some of it, but there's a lot more we can go over too. But cool. And just like anything else, you know, Z Modeler is always in flux as well. There's always going to be new stuff. Did you show instance message feature yet? Wasn't sure how to set it up. No, but we can do that real quick. And here's the thing too, is like, I think that demo I did that I think was pretty good. Not that I'm a great demo guy, but as far as like, hold on, let me just go here real quick. So if you want to see my Pixelogic streams, go to the Pavlovich Workshop on Pixelogic. It also goes to my YouTube channel. I'm going to go to Pixelogic ZBrush here. And also down here, the official event that me and Joseph Drust did, this is where I kind of showed you where we got into the guy with the shoulder pads. That's where you can set it up. There's two. I did it two ways. There's a documentation way, and then I did it two different ways. Honestly, my favorite is the macro way. Like the macro way is excellent, and maybe I'll just do that one tonight because it's so fast. But I'll link you there and get that up and running. Cool. I guess. You know, but ZBrush is ZBrush. I would hate for it to be another program. And I would say there's a lot of hard surface modelers that use ZBrush. You'd be surprised. And also, all these hard surface modelers that are like, oh my god, Subdiv to the max. A lot of the really good ones do all of their ideation and their volume exploration. They basically model the whole damn thing in ZBrush, and then they go through and meticulously rebuild the whole fucking thing in Subdiv. So 99% of the fun work's done in ZBrush, and then the garbage Subdiv modeling work, you do that wherever you want. Who cares? It's just boring rebuilding of the meshes anyways. Like, if that's your jam, go for it. But the fun part of it is in ZBrush, which is making the cool idea actually happen, as opposed to, vertex noodling yourself to death. Yeah, me and Drust in our beige empty rooms. I threw my green screen behind me just so I can have my little head in the corner, not quite so in there. Cool. And actually, yeah, every time I've been using ZBrush a while, but I use all the other programs. And honestly, like when I go into another program, I'm so much slower. Like when I want to, all these demos I did in basically a day. Like when I go through here and it's like, okay, so the truck I modeled during some meetings, but basically like this demo, this demo, this demo, this demo, and this demo, I did all of those in one day. I had to take a Friday off because I was capped at my PTO and I wasn't accruing anymore. So I was like, I gotta take a Friday off, and I did all those demos in a day. Recorded them, edited them. This one, the truck took me a day because I did it during meetings, and then the scene setup took me like a couple hours the next day. And it's all, and you can see how fast it goes. Like in those videos that I'm doing. Go here to videos again. Again, it's these latest 6 or so, but it's like these things are just dumb simple to model in ZBrush. Like I think most of the things I hear about when I'm like, oh, you can't model this in ZBrush, you can't model that in ZBrush, you can't model it in ZBrush. A lot of other people can. And here's the thing too, is it's like, well, this is slow and this is dumb. I don't want to say it, but consider maybe you're slow and dumb. No, I'm just kidding. But it's more of a comfortability. It's like a being comfortable thing. Certainly you're never going to be as fast because if you have something that already works, then why would you try to change it any differently? When I go out of here and I can make 6 demos in a day, and then I go into another program, of course I'm going to feel like a toddler because I'm like, I know how to do this. I know the order of operations, and now this program's dumb because it's not exactly what I was used to. It's more of what you're bringing to it than the actual program. If I was in Maya and I had everything set up like I have, ZBrush and has all the functionalities there, I could probably get pretty close. There are some things that ZBrush does that I can't get to work very fluidly in other programs, or it's more of a hassle than you'd think. You'd think, oh, ZBrush's interface and all these options, how can you even do anything? And I watch people do it in another program, and they're like, okay, here's what you do. Beep, boop, beep, and you go over here and you type in this setting, and then you go in this menu and you run this macro, and then you download this thing and you download this plugin that this guy made. It's going to cost you $42, and then you run this thing, and then you go over here to this menu, and it's like, you said ZBrush was convoluted, and I could do this in 5 seconds in ZBrush, go into my custom menu, hop in here, drag this thing out, run some options, and I'm done. And you just spent 15 minutes trying to explain to me how this made more sense somewhere else. It's more of a comfort thing. It's more of an order of operation thing than almost anything else I've noticed. And people also get really caught up in how good they can bevel on Edge. And it's like, okay, bevel them edges, man. Congratulations. Cool. Yeah, that's the other thing too, like the Chaos Masons, Marco Floof and stuff. It's basically like, yeah, if you can ideate in ZBrush, you can take it to a certain point and then just rebuild the whole thing in Subdiv, or you can brute force it like the Chaos Masons guys and just be like, yeah, zero mesh, learn the brush is good enough. And when you go to 3D print it, nobody cares that it's sub-D modeled. Is it destructive? Is it quite as usable? Yes, no, maybe. But at the same time, if your end result, nobody cares, and nobody's like, oh, it needs to be super optimized for a library or to hand off to another partner relationship or something like that, then boom, you can get it done in ZBrush so much faster than having to go through those extra steps. You don't always have to. Pick and choose your battles. Installing new ZBrush version, like explain, I have to read manually, start up brushes or lightbox folders for alphas or other brushes in new versions folder. I'm going to have a new what's new in 2021 coming out, but if you're brand new to ZBrush, go to my playlist here, go to this one, new intro to ZBrush playlist, and I just lost all my windows. Skin wrapping on muscled forms, we kind of showed that. You can use collisions for that. Yes, it's always going to feel inefficient until it's not. Or maybe it always will, depending on how you're set up. There's a lot of things you can do in other programs that you can't do in ZBrush necessarily. So, like, yeah, if you want to go to like a Moi, Fusion 360 Moi 3D conversion, face weighted normals, n-gons all over the place stuff, then yeah, I wouldn't use ZBrush for that. Yes, everyone has preferences for workflows, for sure. How good are the Boolean tools currently in ZBrush? They Boolean. Cool. We'll probably usually stream first Tuesday and Thursday of the month. Tuesday on Pixelogic, then Thursday on mine. VFX, you can't match a camera. Unfortunately, you cannot model in ZModeler for hard surface. Fair enough. Pixelogic has true perspective, last I checked. So if you have this here, by default, if you go in here to draw, this is turning true perspective off. So here's your camera view. So this should match if you're going into any other external program. Actually, when you export your FBX, you can export the camera and the camera settings as well. You can actually go in here and you can save all this stuff too. Cool. New optimized button next to the multi-threading about. Is that underneath here under preferences? Performance? Or is it under, I don't even know where that is. Hopefully if you hold down control, probably won't tell you. Yeah, it might tell you more information if you just hold down control over it, exactly what it does. I'm not exactly sure. Cool. So yeah, we were going to talk a little bit about, you know what, I guess I don't need to pull anything special for this. We'll just grab the Nixie humanoid. And so we were talking about, I'm just going to do one example of this, and this is my preferred workflow method, and it's assuming that you kind of know Nanomesh and how it works. If you want to know more, just watch our demo stream. But essentially what I would do is just go in here really quickly, and well, first I would need to start modeling the shoulder pad, right? So we need some semblance of what this is going to be. So I'm going to go to BTO for topology brush, and we're just going to go through here, and we're going to say, here is this. And we're going to go around here. And we're going to tap off. So here we go. We have our the split mask points, and we have our shoulder pads here. We can go through here, the Z modeler, Q mesh, polygroup. Island is fine. Just hold down shift, and we can kind of push these surface normals along here. We can say maybe crease dynamic. Let's uncrease all. Let's crease tolerance that up a bit. Crease level 3, smooth Subdiv before, kind of knock those back a little bit. But the problem is I want to be able to work on this symmetrically, and right now it's not like Modo where you can have like an arbitrary work plane. So what we can do though is we can say, let's go out of X symmetry. I'm just going to want one instance of this. We're going to say delete hidden, and I'm going to go, one thing I like to do just to get it right in the middle of my scene, unify, and then we're going to go turn on our floor W and just hold down Shift and move this around here. And we're going to say, just give me a quick mirror and weld. So we now have let's do a mirror and weld. So X symmetry turned on. And really quickly, let's just say, you know what, fine. Let's turn off our floor here. And I'm going to do a quick apply that dynamic, and then let's turn on Dynamesh. So now we can go through here and we can start sculpting our Dynamesh here. Let's turn off. Did I have a bunch of settings on here? So I've been messing around with a lot of settings, so now I've got like smooth brushes that do some weird stuff. So anyway, we have a mesh here, and we're having fun, and we're kind of exploring what we want to do with our shoulder pad. However, we can't sculpt like symmetrically and also have it show up on our mesh. So we go in here and we turn everything back on. It's like, okay, I can imagine what this would look like. And in the old days, you could use array mesh. You could actually use nanomesh for this, but sculpting and seeing it update on the fly wasn't possible. So basically what they've done is I can go in here to a new macro. Again, you can do it, there's two manual methods you can do, but we're going to skip all that. We're just going to go over to macro, shift the snap here, and we're going to say create instance subtool. That's going to run a bunch of operations. And now this one is going to tell you, go ahead and just position this BTR, position this mess where you want. And now, of course, when you're doing a shoulder pad, you could possibly get away with doing a mirror and weld in the Z-axis. Just kind of go through here and starting to lose RAM. There's like a mirror and weld in Z-axis, but again, shoulder pads aren't necessarily going to be mirrorable in that Z. So it might be kind of backed off a little bit and over here to the side, and then down here, and then held down Control, and you can drag up another copy. Now this one doesn't really have an axis, and again, you don't have arbitrary work planes necessarily, and honestly, I don't really enjoy keeping up with those anyways. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, you know what, I've got a bunch of things here. Let's go ahead and say, go and rotate this around. You're also going to notice as I go through here and I can scale this independently. It's the same mesh. These are just instance meshes. We can't sculpt on these. But if we go in here to our nano mesh and we say show placement, these are the planes we're actually moving around, moving these instance meshes around. It's a little bit easier to see them when they're not on. So you can just kind of go through here and kind of scale this down. So not that I would ever necessarily have shoulder pads and knee pads and have the elbow pads in the exact same mesh, but you can. So if you go in here again to show placement, we've got planes all over the place that are controlling the placement of that. If you want to do symmetrical, make sure LSIM is turned off. Just do a quick mirror and weld across the X. Go into your Z modeler brush. We're going to do spin edges, single poly, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, oops, 1, 2, 3, oops, yeah. And then 1, 2, 3. So now these are all spun. We can go through here and you can turn off show instance, show placement. So now if we want to edit this mesh, we're going to go edit mesh, and split screen is going to be turned on. So now as we go through here and we're modeling, we can turn on X symmetry. You can do basically anything while you're in edit mesh mode. You can Z-remesh it and project history if you want. Sky's the limit. So you can go through here and now you can start doing this type of sculpting. Let's turn on L and let's go through here and let's go ahead and start sculpting our hard surface meshes here. We'll go into Damien standard here and just kind of pull this down and start doing these teeth and pulling these things around and do like a little skull sculpt like we did. In a Damien standard, we can kind of pull out the hard surface edges, and this is that ideation phase. Also while you're doing this, make sure you have, I'm going to go in here to inflate, turn on backface masking. Make sure your brushes have backface masking on so you can kind of avoid that type of mess, but we can fix that real quick. Also, shift brush, backface mask. Let's go over here to our brushes and say shift. I have this saved. I need to go through here and save this because basically for my smooth brush modifiers, I like to have weighted smooth mode always set to 1 by default. So I need to go into my data, Z startup folder, and then resave over that because those are the default brushes. You want more information on that? My YouTube channel should have most of that information there. So anyway, here's where we were talking about like a little bit of hard surface exploration. So just being able to go through here and very quickly like determine, where my hard surfaces should go. And then if you need to, you can also pull down a corner. So it's like, I want these to be, squared off. You can kind of do this. There's a lot of methods for getting your idea out quickly and then figuring out how to build it, as opposed to, and again, if you can do it this fast with Subdiv modeling, I'm not going to stop you for sure. I can't do it. So this is where my crutch is. Let me figure out my idea first, and then later I'll figure out exactly, where my edge loops need to be in order to resolve these surfaces if I need to. Or in like the Kiosk Mason's case, if you just can brute force it and just Z-remesh it and clean it up a little bit and ship it, you can get it done in hours instead of days or weeks. So I'll go through here. And okay, so we got this, and it's updating on the fly, by the way. So while we're doing all this sculpting, again, if we want to go through here, this is something I did in the demo. We can go in here to brush, and we got some cool brushes in here, some dragon bones. You can hit M, or you can just kind of go through there. And this is too where you can kind of evaluate, okay, I want to put some horns on this. And if you were doing this in a vacuum, you'd be like, oh, that looks cool. And then you go over here to your mesh, and you're like, oh no, yeah, that's not going to work too good. So you can kind of evaluate on the fly how these things are going to work, and it'll update on the fly as you're moving around. And of course, we're doing elbow pads and stuff too. So as we're doing this, all these things are updating. And like we said before in the demo here, you can just go through here and say, yeah, let's do a bend arc and kind of bend it this way or bend it this way, and then change that radius so we can kind of squeeze it in on a shoulder a little bit or squeeze it out, and whatever you need to do. And once you're done, you can go out of Edit Mesh, and then you can go in here and be like, hey, you know what? Show placement. I don't even like those elbow pads. Get rid of that plane, delete hidden. And oh, we should have that X symmetry turned on for that, but that's okay. There you go, delete hidden. So now all of these are updated. We can turn off show instances. Oh, show placement. The show instances, if you're in here and edit mesh and it's like, it's starting to bog down. Let's say you've got like 15 copies of a 1 million polygon mesh and it's kind of slow to sculpt on, turn off show instances, just do your thing over here. And then if you need to kind of reevaluate what's going on with your mesh, after you kind of go through and make changes, just turn show instances back on. You can check it out and make sure it's cool. But yeah, so now you've got that here, and let's go into our nanomesh show instances, and then you can convert this. You can BPR to Geo or whatever you need to do. Update site your demos are stage over here. Let's go because anatomy is way too much for me to learn, but I wish I was. Anatomy is way too much for me to learn. But you know what? If you do it and you practice it, it's just like anything else. You get better at it over time. And one of the things that helped me was being like, I'm never going to master anatomy. That's just something I'm going to keep learning and learning and learning, and then I'm going to die and I'm going to be like, I don't know, 7%. But as long as you're learning, it makes things funner, especially when you're designing stuff or just going through and figuring things out. It's a lot better than being like, oh, I always have to revert back to my reference every move I make. It frees you up a little bit. So things do get funner, and that's true for anything. Things get funner as you learn more technique stuff. Things get funner as you learn more design, aesthetic fundamentals. Things get funner as you learn anatomy. This gets faster and easier to kind of work on the fly. Cool. Dynamics of fiber mesh. Yeah, Joseph Druss did that. And I did a little bit of it when I was demoing. I can always go through here. So we have fiber mesh and go in there to Lightbox fibers. I don't know, grab something maybe that's reasonable. What is this? Preview settings, BPR settings. Let's change this. Nope. Modifiers here. I was trying to get segments, subdiv, coverage. There we go. So here's some fiber mesh here. If we go here and say accept, you should, I mean, it's just geometry at this point, right? So you should be able to, and this was a thing, you could scatter things, I remember. So we've run like dynamics, collision volume off. I'm just gonna see what this does here. We have a floor somewhere in our scene. And we turn on gravity. And let's see if we can mask this. Yeah, okay. So let's say, crank the strength up. Let's allow a little bit of self-collision, see if it goes a little bit nuts. And also let's turn this up so we can see it. Okay, so the cool thing about this is I think you can go in here to masking. Again, I haven't really tried this, but go in here to masking and there might be a mask by fibers, fiber mask. So now you can like mask all the roots out and those will kind of sit into place. And now, oh yeah, there we go. You kind of simulate that down. And while you're simulating, maybe you want to run an inflate. So while it's simulating down, it can be inflating at the same time. It's a very low inflate. And it's also in only 2 axes, but it's kind of a neat one. But yeah, you can scatter fibers and stuff like that too. Everything just melts if I simulate it too much. Is that normal? Can the object be more rigid? Yeah. So at the very beginning of the stream, we talked. That was the very first thing I brought up because I think the most people are having that exact problem. Simulation iterations, gravity or speed at which you're simulating to allow those iteration calculations to happen, and also this firmness right here. Strength, you probably want to keep at 1, but firmness, you definitely want to play with to get a more silky or a more leathery finish to your cloth. Yeah, that was something I brought up in the thing too. As soon as you add collidable things. Basic modeling, learn basic modeling, sculpting. Sculpting, you need to know anatomy, otherwise things aren't believable. Yeah, that's all part of it too. How does simulation interact with fiber mesh? Just like this. So if you know what, let's do this. Let's say, you know what, let's do a append this, and then we'll say E here. And we're going to say collision volume. And if you ever calculate a collision volume and you don't want to see it, you just want to have things react to it, you can just calculate the collision volume and then turn it off. And then as you run that simulation, it should go through here. Do we mask? Just mask by fibers. Collision volume, inflate, gravity, run. It's acting a little bit differently now. Let me see. Oh, firmness. Oops. What did I change? Firmness. Up maybe. Collision. Self-collision. Floor collision. Gravity. Let's turn gravity up a bit. Boy, did I do something weird with that collision volume? I don't think so. That's weird. Let's change that. Let's turn that down a little bit. Huh. That was weird. But now you can see it's colliding with that sphere. But again, if you don't want to see it, but you still want it to collide with that volume, you should be able to collide with an invisible volume there. Cool. Yeah, fiber mask is where you can kind of mask out the roots, or you can just change that curve if you need to. You can go in here to fiber mask profile and just you can do a flip horizontal, and that'll mask the. You can let the roots go, but probably that's your best bet. Cool. Yeah, I might have calculated something weird. I might have had the sphere selected and calculated the collision volume, and then went back to the fibers and then tried to run it, and it was colliding with itself. I think that's what I did. Cool. All right. Well, hey, we're late. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to head out. I'll have more videos for you. Watch the videos on my channel that kind of go through a bunch of different steps, like the shattering glass and stuff. And then also the demo that me and Dress did. Dress covered a lot more stuff that I don't think I touched that much. But cool. Is there a way to not change the viewport's rotation pivot when you tap somewhere on an object? Viewport's rotation pivot. Oh yeah, that's oh, I took that out of here, or maybe they took it out, but that is, oh, where is that? Local. If you turn off local transformations, wherever you tap will be ignored. Cool. Right on. And one last thing. Masking with the transpose tool. Well, masking, you can mask with a gizmo, just hold down control. If you have the transpose, exact same thing, just hold down control as you pull down with the mask. Cool. Right on, everybody. I'll talk to you later, and have a good night.